I understand that we don't have much time, unfortunately, to listen to their presentations to find out about the further paths of the development of architecture. My name is Pyotr Kudryavtsev. I'm Citymaker's partner, and we will be speaking about the construction of forest cities and vertical forest. First, I'd like to give the floor to Stefano. Those who have been in Milan have seen his first big project of the vertical forest, and now he is implementing a lot of interesting and large-scale projects in Asia, in particular in China, and I hope that he will speak to us about all these projects. Stefano, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. So I briefly show you some images which are introducing the concept of the vertical forest. So this is, as you can see, an image. The video doesn't start. Please go. Okay, I bet we can start from here. It's about climate change and how we can really try as architects to deal with this issue. And I think it's extremely relevant. And this is probably you know it, is a BBC program called Planet Art. And Planet Art in the second version was showing how cities are growing all over the world, and how cities are producing the 75% of the CO2 which is present in the atmosphere, and how can we do as architects in order to deal with this point. This is a BBC movie filming the construction of the vertical forest in Milano, who was selected as one of the ways, as one of the tools that we can use in order to deal with three main issues. One is the issues of sustainability and the use of renewable energies. And that's something that we know so well, so how to use solar panels, how to use geothermal plants, so mechanical devices. The second is about demineralization, so introduce, in this case, please go ahead. This. We have something like 21,000 plants and 1,900 trees in these two towers, so it's equivalent of 2.5 hectares of real forest in a space of 2,500 square meters in the center of a city. And it's a way to put together the things, because these two towers also had a Golden LEED certification, so they use solar panels. They use also in terms of biodiversity. The result of these two buildings in the first 3 years are really interesting. So there are also in terms of biodiversity. The result of these two buildings in the first 3 years are really interesting. So there are more than 20 different species of birds that are nesting and are coming back in a way in Milan and so on. So the point was, that's another video which is showing all of what is about maintenance, so how to deal with this kind of, let me say, ecosystem, vertical ecosystem, and that's one of the ways we have selected to reduce the cost of maintenance, and it's in a certain way also a new kind of profession. So there are flying gardeners, climbers and gardeners that are following the maintenance of the building twice a year. Okay, go ahead. So we are now trying to replicate this in a different context. Go ahead. This is, for instance, what we are doing in Lausanne, in Switzerland. Please. Again. This is what we are doing in Nanjing. Please. This is something that you have just, so we have won a competition yesterday in Utrecht, and this is what we are doing in Utrecht. Please. So it's a tower in the center of the city, which will host, also in this case, is 12,000 plants, yes, in different conditions, yeah, please. And also in this case, we start selecting the trees, and then we design the building, the facade of our architecture in relation with nature, with evolution of the trees, and with sunlight exposure, with the condition of humidity that change from 10 to 100 to 150 meters tall, with the windy condition. And that's a way simply to show how these buildings are changing season by season. Yeah, avanti. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Ancora. And then, well, I'm very fast, but that's how we can imagine not simply to replicate, but also to introduce a way to make these three issues, demineralization, biodiversity, and sustainability, working together. And we were invited to talk about this in Paris COP21. Avanti, 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 avanti. And so we are, from that very moment, started to develop different kind of projects connected with the possibility to make together biodiversity, sustainability, and demineralization. This is what we are now doing in Macau, yeah, where we are designing Avanti. We are designing a high-line railway system connected with a bike, which at the same time related with mobility, related with the opportunity to gather the rainwaters, and it's a way also to redistribute and redifferentiate the waste from the city. Again, okay. So that's a system, a linear system, intervening in existing cities. So it's a way what we are trying to improve the quality of, which is about the opportunity to give an alternative to the simple addition of new suburban environments. You know that in China what is happening every year, that more than 15 million people are abandoned in the countryside and in the country. So it's impossible to imagine to host this wave only in existing cities. So the idea, the necessity to imagine how to build a new city is a day-by-day an urgency. In this case, in Yuzhou, we are proposing a small green city of 30,000 people with more than 80 buildings, all done with facade, with trees and plants and the forest. Also in this case with a public transportation system, with electric cars, distribution. And we are now in the phase of studying the different settlements, okay, and how to increase that. Okay, so I think I can stop here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Stefano. Можем мы сейчас подготовить тогда?
So can we now prepare Ken Yeang's presentation, and I will take this time to ask Stefano a question. Indeed, these principles are quite interesting. This can be called green architecture or environmentally friendly architecture. How do you think the principles that you are now using in the architecture of these new buildings, how are they translated into the urban planning? How are they translated into the urban design principles and town planning principles? And how the public spaces can change as a result? Are they turning into something common with the building, or buildings are different, public spaces are still different?
I think we have three main ways to deal with this kind of opportunity. The first is when you have to intervene in an existing city. So the point is how and when you could add new green facade that are not only green, but they can also, I was saying, improving the quality of the building in terms of reducing the energy consumption, the excursion of the climate excursion inside, outside. So, and that's a way that we, an instrument that is, can be fixed in the master plan, and we can intervene locally, adding new facades. The second is producing kind of graphs like the one that we have done in Milan or in Nanjing or in Switzerland. So like tall buildings or buildings that act as ecosystems that are contributing, if they are connected with horizontal green corridors, they can really help so much in cleaning the air, producing oxygen, absorbing the fine dust, the microparticulate, the fine dust produced by the traffic, and that's another very important way. Then, for sure, this is never alternative to the necessity to implement and enlarge or what is the horizontal green surfaces, I mean parks, gardens, and so on. When you have to deal with a new city, the situation is basically new, it's completely changed. So in that case, you have really to, from the beginning, study new principles and in a certain way, a totally new way of putting together the artificial sphere and the natural sphere, so architecture and nature. And that's exactly what we are trying to do in China, and it's also in this case an experiment. I really like to repeat something that I normally do. So we have not done a copyright on that because we think that it's such an important challenge that it's necessary that has been shared with many other architects, urban planners, public administrators, politicians, and we hope that what we have done will be soon implemented and improved.
Спасибо большое, Стефано. Спасибо за прекрасный.
Thank you very much, Stefano, for this very interesting presentation.
Okay, sure.
Good. Well, good evening, everyone. Today I'm going to present two sets of ideas. I'm going to present two ideas. So can I speak in this one? Yep. Hello. Right. Hello, Mummy. Where are you? I'm going to present two ideas about green design. There are several more, but today I only have 15 minutes. And so I can only talk about two ideas. The first idea is to see green design as biointegration. How do I change this? Right. Now this is from this film called Mad Max, and that's Charlize Theron. And what she has is a prosthetic arm. In many ways, what we do as architects is very similar to what doctors and surgeons do with prosthesis, because the prosthetic arm has to attach to a host organism. It's not a host organism, which is a human body. Now, if you look into prosthesis, then everything depends on effective biointegration. To me, there are three types of biointegration. I call it physical, systemic, and temporal. Physical means just juxtaposition, putting one thing next to the other. Systemic means biologically connected. And third is conserving and replenishing natural resources. So now, a prosthetic arm is artificial. It is synthetic. It's human-made, and is attached to a host organism. Now, the equivalent for the prosthetic arm is our built environment. Our buildings are natural, synthetic. It's human-made. It's artificial. So the question then is, what is the equivalent host organism? Well, the answer is very simple. It's the biosphere. It's the host organism, the living organism for built environment. So then everything depends on successful and effective biointegration of what we make and build as human beings with the natural environment. So I'm going to explain quickly what do these mean. Physical biointegration is basically connecting one to the other. So here's a man with his arm cut off, and that's a prosthetic arm. And so by connecting together, then what you have an artificial arm. Now, in a similar way, if you look at buildings and look at our cities, what a lot of architects are doing is just putting vegetation and into the city, and that's it. So I call it physical integration, but that's not enough. You have to go beyond physical integration. And so we have to, these are some of the experiments I've done over the last 20, 30, 40 years in trying to put vegetation in buildings, but I needed to do something more than that. This is the building that we did back in the late 80s, where we put vegetation on the outside, but it's a patchy relationship. Being patchy is not connected. In nature, everything's connected. So the vegetation that we put into buildings must be linked. And this is what I'll try to do in subsequent work. And so with this project, we had vegetation on the balconies. But in doing this, I started to develop the idea of a low-energy bioclimatic high-rise. That means, you know, we put the sun on the east, we put the lift courts on the hot sides. We have natural ventilation to lift lobbies and to staircases. Here's another scheme. This is one of the buildings we did for IBM, where this time we wanted the vegetation to be connected, and it is linked from ground going all the way up to the top of the building. And this is a detail of the connection. And then it goes up one side of the building, and then the other side goes up again. And so in this way, I have a continuous vegetation climbing up the top of the building. I started to do research on how the core of the building's location could engender a low-energy building. So of all these different core locations, the one with the red square with the core on the east side and west side has the lowest air conditioning requirements. And so you can see the cores on the east and west side, and I only need to shade the east and west side to keep out the hot sun. For the same project, we did extension for it recently, and here it is. But this time we tried a different system. We tried a trellis system, where a plant climbs up to a trellis, goes across a planter box, and all the way up to the top of the building. So this continuity is important. We started to experiment with green walls. What happens if we had a green wall that went all the way around the building? The green wall, basically, in this case, is a series of metal cassettes with a growing medium in between, and that if the vegetation fails, all you got to do is take out the cassette, replace it, rather than rip off the whole thing like some, like some other systems. And so this is the green wall system that we adapted. But the ideal solution is the continuous one, where the vegetation is linked, it goes all the way up, because in nature, everything's connected. Ecological nexus is crucial in nature. Why? Because it enables species interaction, enables species migration. By connected, it enables a larger pool of resources to be shared among the species. By having a larger pool of resources to share among the species, it engenders a much more stable ecosystem. And so a lot of work starts with doing what I call inspirational drawing. So we did this drawing for vegetated facade, in which you had a walkway to one side. It took us a few years to get this implemented. Here it is. You can see the walkway, you can see the vegetation, sun shading the glass in the back. And it continuously goes up around the building. With every floor, with every facade, we climb up one floor. So it goes all the way up to the top of the building. And now, if you stretch this out, it is 1.3 kilometers long. It's probably the longest linear vegetated park, in the world. But more than that, first thing we do is that we look at the biodiversity of the location. You can see, the highest biodiversity is around the tropics, and Singapore is about 1.1 degree, 5 minutes north is the very biodiverse location. And you can see this is some of the vegetation we adopted on this site. Now, if you just have a linear park, it's deadly boring. So what we try to do with every time it hits a corner, we open it up into a sky court, into a little mini plaza, so that it's not a linear park, but it goes continuously all the way up to the building. And some parts, you can actually, people can have a meal outside of a cup of coffee. And these are some of our other projects where we explore the idea of sky courts. The last one on the right is the one we're doing in London, where we have received alternative sky courts. The National Library in Singapore have very large sky courts, and the vegetation you can see on the right-hand side. And this is another project that's under construction now, where we have the sky courts in courtyards, which alternate on every facade. And then for this particular project, we have roof gardens at mid-level. That's not moving, I think, It's not changing.
Проверьте презентацию, пожалуйста.
Can you check the presentation, please? Has it stopped?
It's the slides for me. Oh yeah, it's working. You got a magic touch. So this is the Upper Blues Roof Garden. Now, what we need to do is not just bring it all the way down to the building, but we want to bring it all the way down to the lowest part of the building. So this was our scheme for Kowloon Waterfront done years ago, and what we have is what we call eco-cells. These are just red squares that bring the vegetation all the way down into the bottom of the building. The eco-cell does a number of things. It brings vertical vegetation into the lower parts of the building, where you can put a biosphere. We have opportunity for rainwater harvesting. There's natural ventilation, lower parts, daylight, and you could have an eco machine on the right. But for this project, the eco-cell is at this, and this is what eco-cell looks like. It's from the top of the building, goes all the way down to the ground floor, and goes all the way down to the basement. At the bottom of the basement is the rainwater harvesting tank, and that's the I'm seeing all this again. That's where the eco-cell is, and there's this going down to the basement of the building. It's not working well, I think. These are the mid-level gardens. Now, it's actually the whole building is separated by an atrium which is naturally ventilated. This is to make this into a low-energy building, and what we have is that we have fans that blow cool air into the bottom building, but on top of the atrium, I have an operable glass roof, which is automated so that in a normal day it is not air conditioned, it's naturally ventilated, and that this is what atrium looks like looking up from the bottom, and that you can see the louvers, glass louvers are open, but they have sensors so that in case it rains, it automatically shuts. Now, it's actually two buildings linked by a bridge. This is the bridge that links the two buildings, and that we simulate the lighting conditions, the daylight conditions, and that we wanted to, because of the deep plan, the original master plan was done by Zaha Hadid, and she basically determined the building form that we had to follow, so that's how we do it, optimize the permissible built-up area. And what it means is that we had to have very deep floor plans, and so one of the experiments we did was to cut a hole, you can see that white square, where we cut it diagonally going all the way down. And so this brings daylight into the inner parts of the building. This is looking up, looking into the glass atrium. And here it is, you can see the floor. And then on top of it is the big hole, and you can see the skylight at the top. And this is looking down into the street, so people can look down the street. Now that's physical integration. Now what is systemic integration? Because systemic means you have to take it has to be a biologically connected process. And so, now it's very much today a theoretical idea. So, biointegration means, you can see it in the comic books, but this poor girl has an entire arm, which is artificial. It's artificial photosynthesis. But there are problems with this. There are problems of, it's like an open wound, there are problems of getting septic and so forth. And so what we try to do then is to create habitats, rather than just put plants on buildings willy-nilly, but we create habitats. The habitats could be, green roofs, could be vertical gardens, could be, green sky courts, green, atriums and so forth. And this is a project that we're working on. We just completed, actually, a couple of weeks ago. It's a huge project for us because it's about 130,000 square meters. And these are the habitats in the building. You can see in the red color, different parts of the building, different habitats. The next is to do research on the native species of fauna that we bring into the site. We don't start with the plants, we start with the fauna, because once we have the fauna, then we choose the plant species that will attract the fauna. And so we prepare what we call a biodiversity matrix. In this way, we correlate the habitats. You can see on the top row, you can see the species on the left-hand side. But it's important to use native species, because once you use other species which you don't verify, they could be invasive species which could be destructive to the ecosystem of that locality.
Ken, we have a couple of minutes. 2 minutes.
Yeah, okay, I'm just going to go quickly. And it's along the access to the Millennium Monument. And that's the west side, because we have to have a different facade, and you can actually see through the glass, and that's the eco-cell for that project. Now, I'm going to finish now to talk about ecosystem services, because this is more important than the early one, because nature does things for us that we don't know, we cannot see it. Now, ecology sees the Earth as covered by this thin film, and nature provides ecosystem services, And ecosystems, bugger, it's not working. So, nature is much more complex, and the ecosystems consist of communities of plants and animals. So I will have to go through this very quickly. These are the interactions in nature that provides ecosystem services. Now, this is a set of ecosystem services that nature provides. It produces oxygen, it enhances genetic diversity, purifies water and air, and so forth. And nature does it for us for free. It can do it without human intervention. And so what we need to do now is to try and bring these into the city. And so this is another justification for bringing ecosystem. And so the idea was to weave in our project the natural and the human-made in planning terms, like you have two class hands. And so in this way, this is the master plan we did for this project. It's in the Reunion Island in the east of Madagascar, which is French territory. That's the master plan. And this is the vegetation climbing up, the vegetation going down, and then this is the view of the scheme. And with every project now, we start with the green infrastructure, and you can see with the third diagram, we show where the habitats are. This is Tau, which is working on now. This was in India, which is about to be completed. This is in Indonesia, where you can see the vegetation climbing up. This is in Guadalajara, you can see the vegetation coming up again on the facade. So to conclude, green design is about biointegration. If we're able to biointegrate everything that we make and do as human beings with the natural environment, there won't be any environmental issues at all. So the secret is actually resolving this, addressing this, and that is the challenge of green design. And finally, the other challenge is to produce ecosystem services. Now, technology can never produce ecosystem service by itself. So we have to engender the use, we have to augment the built environment with natural systems to produce ecosystem services. Thank you.
Ken,
As Kermit the Frog says, oh, sorry, I should have lost slide, never mind.
Ken, thank you so much. You actually started the presentation with a comparison of the artificial parts of the body and the building environment. But if we're talking about the psychology of the person, the psychology, how it is changing right now, and what is going to happen in the future, how do you think what the scheme will be in this case? What will psychologically change in a person with the development as it is right now, or if we will have this eco-friendly environment in the future?
I believe that at the end of the day, we will have to produce hybrid systems. And so the city then becomes what I call an eco-cyborg.
Okay.
It is human-made, part natural, part technological, working together as a whole. So I said the future of cities is to be eco-cyborgs. And the same with the human being. There are, science fiction, concepts about the eco-cyborg, but in time it will happen. Our human body will be augmented by technology to become hybrid systems.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Коллеги, давайте поблагодарим наших...
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Let us thank our speakers.
Amazing job and its amazing presentations. Unfortunately, we have very, very short time, but I really hope that we will have some time to discuss this during the festival.